Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. The light getting in is perhaps an apt theme for Leonard Cohen's oeuvre. And the word oeuvre is also apt, for before his songs and voice and concerts, there were his poems. The words of that traveler preceded his tunes. The poet guided the singer and the musician. Like all poets, love and lost have always dominated Cohen's poems. Many of us love "Dance Me to the End of Love," but in that song, along with the dance, there is Cohen's invoking of a burning violin, and the dancing till he is gathered safely in he wants to be, in he needs to be. For being with her, in her, that's where, that's how he finds safety, he finds warmth. The same search, quest, needs are there in 1,000 Kisses Deep. You win for a while, but then your little winning streak ends. The word little in winning streak is telling. Leonard Cohen was not a mere modern poet. He was a product of a serious exposure to 3 philosophical strands: Buddhism, Japanese Zen mastery, and of course, before and after, Judaism. More of the Kabbalistic rather than Talmudic strand of Judaism. The 3 philosophies have a lot in common. They all, in their own ways, pursue the ultimate reality, the divine, the absolute, the all. Not only, not merely by reason, not through a quest for getting to the essence of that reality, for they know, they recognize and they teach that this is impossible. The absolute, the all, is not to be understood by the human mind, rather to be experienced, to be approached through every single thought, feeling, and action. Cohen put it perfectly in an interview with David Remnick in The New Yorker, that he never, in all of his long studying of these 3 philosophical schools, tried to find different conceptions of the divine, of God. He was satisfied with how he understood that, or rather how he felt it through Judaism. What he was after were new ways of seeking the divine, new ways of experiencing and approaching the divine. In 1,000 Kisses Deep, Leonard Cohen invokes the wretched and the meek. Those could well be lovers in doomed love stories. They could also be all of us in realizing our state without seeking the divine, without being on the ultimate journey of knowing, experiencing and living beauty. Beauty here transcends the visually appealing. Beauty here is the perfect harmony that aligns all of reality in and outside us to fall into place so as for us to live the life we want. One of the books that left a major influence on Cohen was Ramesh Balsekar's Consciousness Speaks. Not surprisingly, actually, for here we find a pragmatic way for seeking the harmonious living. Pragmatism is key for Leonard Cohen. He spent over 5 years living basically like a monk in a Zen monastery, which is quite interesting for an artist with global renown. But despite that, or perhaps because of this spiritual depth, Cohen grew to appreciate utilitarian ways of living. His life was far from being ascetic. He indulged himself, his senses, his wants and desires, but he knew or sensed the limits of and for indulgence. He understood the centrality of self-control, without which the path is lost. the pilgrim loses his or her way, the temple collapses. As Cohen put it marvelously also in 1,000 Kisses Deep, confined to sex we pressed against the limits of the sea. That is the self-control of those who understood that their nature, that acquired and nurtured and grown by approaching the divine, becomes of no limit. We control ourselves so as to reach the state of needing no controls. We limit ourselves so as to realize our limitlessness. It is not surprising that Cohen has never achieved full stardom in the way pop music at its uppermost echelons defined stardom. To a large extent, Cohen was always a sort of a niche taste. Even in the realm of poet-musicians, he never achieved the kind of fame and success that, say, Bob Dylan achieved. Interestingly, also as David Remnick tells us in writing about Cohen, Cohen's own producers understood that they were dealing with a great talent. The question for them, however, was whether he was good for the time. There is a difference in the sense that many great artists are indeed great. They enter history, they alter the consciousness of their societies, and in doing that, they leave a mark on humanity. But that does not mean that for their own times they were good. At least in pure commercial terms, an artist can be tremendously talented, but he or she might not necessarily sell very well. In the case of Cohen, it took him decades to sell quite well. And perhaps by the standards of true stardom, he never achieved selling very well. That's why, even after the peak of his stardom, he was more or less compelled to return to singing and touring in his later years. We do not know if he really enjoyed that, though there are indications, particularly from the testimonies of musicians who had accompanied him on his last tour, that he did enjoy a lot of the production and rendering of his later work. Perhaps more importantly, though, for us enjoying his work, his oeuvre, now and in the future, this later work of Leonard Cohen was certainly much more mature, not only because of the vast experience poured into it, but also because in it there were measured emotions, much more precise thoughts. Even the old songs of decades past were rendered differently in those later years of his. Perhaps there was less dynamism in these renderings, but without doubt there was more gravitas. Leonard Cohen is an artist of the soul. His work elevates, lifts us onto the path of ascension. Even in his kingdom of sadness, his poems and voice make us vibrate at higher frequencies. But along with all of that, Leonard Cohen is an example of that rare artist who stayed true to his ideas without succumbing to any pressures from popular culture or from the market. And yet, while staying true to his talent, to his inner world, he did show us the wonderful flowering of a deep, wide, wise, and of course, intelligent mind.